special honor to welcome as our speaker tonight, Dr. Please help me, Frederick Ifeanyi. I really will struggle with this
Ifeanyi
name.
Obananya.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Who is Director of the Dominicans for Justice and Peace, Nigeria and Ghana. And he is also professor member of the Dominican province of St. Joseph, the worker in Nigeria and Ghana, and a contributor to West Africa Transitional Justice Center and a member of the African Scholars Forum. He has published both local and international in peace and conflict resolution, social political philosophy, philosophy and education, and philosophy of mind. His publications are available for research and all of that. So, of course, we are also missing the song tonight. So please, Doctor, just go ahead and take it away.
Okay. Thank you very much, Nick.
Yeah. Sorry about this.
That's okay. So I welcome us all to this webinar. Our topic is on promoting peace through political participation, a focus on Nigeria. This topic, promoting peace through political participation, a focus on Nigeria, is a topic that deals closely with the concept of democracy. Hence, I would like to start by explaining how democracy was viewed in the ancient Greece. From antiquity, the practice wherein the authority of a state and its government is created and sustained by the rule of the people has always existed. The democracy in ancient Greece was characterized by three features. First, supreme power was vested in the ecclesia of all male citizens. Number two, they permitted and practiced the freedom of speech. Number three, all political offices were open to all citizens who were chosen by lots. But unlike in the ancient Greek society, in our modern society, we practice what we call representative democracy because of the large number of citizens that we have, because everybody cannot come together again to make decisions or public policies. But sometimes I also argue that even in the ancient Greek society, that they also practice a sort of representative democracy because women were not allowed to participate in the decision-making of the state. But with the development of the idea for gender inclusive gender, to include women in the decision of the state, so the idea became widened and the concept of representative democracy also emerged. But one thing is common, that is the participation of the citizens. And this is what is technically referred to as political participation. Then what is political participation? Political participation refers to those voluntary activities by which members of a society share in the selection of rulers and directly or indirectly take part in the formation of public policies. 2 points are very clear here. One, they share in the selection of rulers and they directly or indirectly take part in the formation of public policies. The concept of political participation implies that the power of selection of rulers and the formation of policies belong to the people. It is very key in any democratic system. In a democratic dispensation, the governance of a country is seen as the collective responsibility of all citizens. Citizens politically participate, see that it makes it such that when citizens participate, it shows or manifests a healthy democracy. So when the citizens begin to show an attitude of apathy, it shows that the democracy that is being practiced is not healthy, and it should be looked into, and the problem should be solved. Let's look at Nigeria as a case study so that we will be able to pin down these ideas. Elections in Nigeria began in the year 1923 with election in the Protectorate of Nigeria. And since that year, so many elections have been held. For instance, presidential election has been held in the year 1979, 1983, 1993, 1991, 2003, 2007, 2011, 2015, and 2019, making it 9 of them. Just as governorship elections, the Senate elections, House of Representative elections, and regional or House of Assembly elections. Local elections have been held twice, and referendums have been held twice, 1959 and 1961. That was when the northern part of Cameroon was being asked whether they would want to join Nigeria. But they asked that it should be delayed a little bit. Then they were now further asked again in 1961, and they accepted. A vote was carried out, and they accepted, and it turned in favor that they should join. So, which means that the northern Cameroonians that have joined did not follow to celebrate Nigerians' independence. They came later on in 1961. But what is the problem? The problem is that in recent times, there have been a decline in voter turnout for Nigeria presidential elections. There has been a decline in voter turnout for Nigeria presidential elections. Ask ourselves why. Looking at this graph, you see that in the year 1979, that the voter turnout was 35.25%. In 1983, it was 38.9%. In 1993, it was 23.9%. 1999, it was 52.26%. In 2003, it was 69.08%. 2007, 57.49%. 2011, 53. 2015, 43, and 2019, it was 34%. Looking at the graph, you will see that there is a downward slope as from 2003. And you begin to ask the question, why? What is happening that Nigerians do not turn out to vote during elections? In comparison to 1999 experience, 2003 voter turnout increased by 10%. The reason was that probably the conviction that the military has truly handed over power and that the state has become democratic encouraged participation in 2003. Then in 2007, voter turnout reduced by 12%. And further by 5.1% in 2011. In 2011, it further slipped down by 5.1% as a result of the fact that electorates had lost confidence in the electoral process because they thought the trend would continue. Algo further explains that the main factor responsible was the imposition of candidates and election rigging that was the order of the day in 2003, and the do or die affair syndrome injected into the politics by the ruling party, People's Democratic Party. Obananya was very key to this in his desire for power. About the 2015 elections, hello? Sorry, I had a little break in my internet.
Okay, that's all right.
Okay, so about the 2015 elections, one was C and Oka for you in their study titled Voting in Nigeria explained that political trust and home ownership had a significant impact on participation more than other factors. They also made it clear that socio-economic factors also can contribute to come out to vote or not. So far, from 1999 to 2015, we can pin down 3 things that contributed to low voter turnout. Number 1, the power of incumbency. Number 2, that stakeholders, which includes the political parties, did not do their work well. And number 3, that INEC did not do a wonderful job. These issues were not addressed, and they affected the 2019 elections. The worst happened. Writing about the 2019 election, IDEA knows that among 17 countries in West Africa, Nigeria had the poorest voter turnout for the most recent presidential elections. The magnitude of this failure still stares at the faces of the members of INEC and the government of Nigeria. This is the data. Togo had voter turnout of 92.3% in their most recent presidential election. Gambia, 89, Sierra Leone, 84, but Nigeria had the lowest, and she had 34.8%. The shame of this was so overwhelming, and in the year 2020, the University of Ibadan collaborated with INEC, and they embarked on a study titled Enhancing Political Participation in Nigeria. They came up with the following conclusions. Number 1, they accepted the fact that there has been a general decline in voter participation in elections over the years, particularly since 2003. They noted 2011 and 2019 for their slight increase obtained over the respective previous years in terms of absolute and relative size of registered voters. The cause for increase in 2011, they pinned it down to electoral reform, the introduction of biometric voter system. And for that of 2011, they pinned it down to mobilization and civic education. They reported that the official figures for 2003 and 2007 are problematic because of the high levels of electoral fraud, which means that even that 2003 that we say that had the highest number, that it wasn't even so clear. The low figure for 2015 seemed quite accurate and devoid of large-scale criticism, but voters did not simply come out. The problem was more of quantity than quality. Since 1999, voter registration has never reached 50% of the country's total population. This means that half of the population that's registered determine those that emerge as leaders in Nigeria. The average percentage of registered voters compared to the country's population for the past 20 years is 43.7%. The highest number of registered voters that is, we had the highest number of registered voters in 1999, but in 2015 we had the lowest number. Why the most recent election, which is 2019, we had the lowest number of voters turnout. So the question now is, what is the way forward? Since it has been made clear that there has been a gradual decrease or decline in voter turnout in Nigeria. Africa Development Choices explains that civic engagement in political process and electoral participation are major indicators of a healthy democracy. But citizens suffer from apathy when they feel disappointed, or when there is a consistent pattern of government inaction or corruption. Hence, the question is, why would they waste their valuable time and resources when the opinion would not count at the poll? Now, let us look at how our politicians have deceived us over the years. As the presidential election of 2023 is drawing near, members of different political parties have started declaring interest to run for the office of the presidency. Great gigs are being offered, and different acts of kindness are being televised on TV, and politics of zoning the presidency alongside a religious division surfaces strongly. On the one hand, some propose that the presidency should be zoned to the southern part. Among these, we have two groups: those who advocate for the south, whether it is east or west, and those who believe that it is time for the southeast. On the other hand, we have those who propose that there should be no zoning, that every Nigerian should be free to contest. But all these things are ways that they bring division amongst us. But there seems to be a third party, a fraction of a separatist group in the southeast, who advocate that elections should not be held. A similar event took place in the gubernatorial November election in Anambra State, where rumors had it that it was the proscribed indigenous people of Biafra that threatened voters and asked that the election be boycotted. But the group made it known in a statement signed by its director of media and publicity, Emma, that IPOB did not call for an election boycott, disassociating the group from the process. However, this is not the first time that IPOB is being associated with an order for an election boycott. It happened in 2017 Anambra gubernatorial election, and it affected voter turnout that year. All the above are political behaviors in Nigeria and means of influencing elections in Nigeria. A study also said that the list also includes godfatherism, rigging, thuggery, cultism, and election litigation. When people see all these things, they become disencouraged, they become disinterested, uninterested in the whole process, and they begin to show a character of apathy. But the worst thing is that our youths are the ones that are being used to perpetrate these crimes. Bratton, in his study titled Vote Buying and Violence in Nigerian Electoral Campaigns, observes, according to survey-based estimates, that there occurs a relationship between poverty and unemployment and electoral violence in Nigeria. He observes, fewer than 1 out of 5 Nigerians is personally exposed to vote buying, and fewer than 1 in every 10 experiences experiences threats of electoral violence. But when, as commonly happens, electoral campaign irregularities are targeted at rural poor, effects are concentrated. That is, they make emphasis, they go out and look for the poor and youth that are unemployed. These effects are as follows: violence reduces turnout, and vote buying enhances partisan loyalty. Most often, regrettably, the youths are used to perpetrate these crimes. But there is something that is happening: the dawn of popular sovereignty, what I call youth political awakening, and its resultant effect towards the promotion of peace. The dawn of political participation in Africa was reignited in 2019. About 60 years, the majority of African countries gained independence. Africans are still asking that their leaders be accountable to them. This has led to many protests. These have led to protests in many African states. For instance, the anti-rape protest in Liberia, the EndSARS protest in Nigeria, shut it all down protests against sexual assault or gender-based violence, Zimbabwe Lives Matter protest against human rights abuses and corruption. Congo is bleeding protest by Congolese women against unprosecuted sexual assault crimes, conflicts, and war crimes in the eastern region of Congo. You know what? One thing is clear, that something was about to happen in Africa, but our leaders remained silent, but their silence was not good. When this protest was going on in Nigeria, for instance, the EndSARS protest, I wanted to remain silent. I didn't want to write, but a friend of mine wrote an article by name Anthony Olayaku, and it provoked my thoughts. Hence, I had to put on my thinking cap and committed my thoughts to paper in response to his article. I titled my work, Citizens Without Sovereignty, as a response to Olayaku. And in that work, I made it clear that the EndSARS protest was not just about the imaging of the police force, but a cry of the youth who were tired of being citizens without sovereignty. That is, Nigerians, or rather those in government, did not understand this. They chose to remain silent instead of a purposeful dialogue. Reports had it that the government used hard power on the protesters. On October 20, 2020, report had it that the military opened live ammunition on the peaceful protesters at Lekki and at Alausa as they waved the Nigerian flag. Sorry. This is a picture of the protest. So many youths came out during that protest. and they were saying no to police brutality, that government should look into the whole thing. But above this, they were also asking that the government should be accountable to them. See what somebody wrote. He said, word for the week, Lekki massacre. The Lekki massacre of October 2020 was the federal government of Nigeria and Lagos state government's response to the EndSARS protest and Sorosoke movement that has been ongoing in the state for about 2 weeks. And you can see here a live, that's a bullet showing that the soldiers used live ammunition on the peaceful protesters. So instead of a purposeful dialogue, they used a fatal, brutal method to suppress protests. And we will see its resultant effect. But this fatal, brutal method that was used to suppress this protest, I wrote in another article in which I compared the Nigerian Biafran War and the EndSARS protest. And I explained that when crisis emerges and people use a fatal, brutal method to suppress it, that it will lead to its growth. That is, this is the very first level. There is crisis. Then people will now use propaganda to convince those that were partially not for that protest to join. And that will lead in the growth of that protest. When the government sees that this protest is growing, which is the stage 2, they will use military force or fatal, brutal method to suppress this protest. Then this protest will enter into what I call in situ state. In situ stage. That is, it will be as if it has fizzled out, but it only went, it was only cool for that moment. And at that stage, I said that the use of fatal, brutal method suppresses the protest, but it does not silence it. Hence, it induces those who are partially against the protest to join. Because at that stage, people will now begin to see it that it is a fight for survival. That it is better that they give up their lives and save their generation to come, instead of leaving their generations to come under bondage. This in situ stage, the intellectuals get involved in the whole protest. Remember that at this stage, it is still in the hiding. It is suppressed, and people think that it has fizzled out. But the intellectuals get involved, and if they control it well, they will realize what they want. But if it is not well managed, it will escalate and create problems. So it was this suppression that led to the discovery of a new nation. What do I mean? During the EndSARS protests, Nigerian youths became aware that it was not religion, neither was it ethnicity that was our problem. That our problem was a monstrous misconception of the state. Our problem was that the state allocates to itself, in the words of Anthony, ubiquity, omniscience, and omnipotence. It happens that even when citizens submit themselves to such a rule, it amounts to self-inflicted tyranny. So after the suppression of the protests, it went into in situ stage to rise again. The fatal, brutal suppression of the protests, which was also the case during the Nigerian Biafran War, convinced more people in joining the movement, which they deemed necessary for their survival. because it has become a fight for survival. But there is a good news. Just as electoral reforms and voter education led to surge in voter registration in 2011 and 2019 respectively, the new electoral reform and the NSAS protests, with its resultant political awakening, also led to increase in voter registration for 2023 elections. What do I mean? This is INEC's data, and these are the states, the number of individuals or persons that registered, that completed their registration for the forthcoming election. So in Sokoto, you have this number, in Kalastina, you have this. But here, I now presented it in a graphic manner. So I now compared 2019 voter turnout, and I compared their 2019 voter registration and 2022 voter registration. And as you can see, that the turnout for 2022 is on the high side. For the Northwest, from Southwest, from South-South, for North Central, for Northeast, and for Southeast. The difference, that is the difference between that of 2022 and 2019, you have this. So 20 Northwest increase of 2022 over 2019 was 2.5. Why there's an increase of 2.0, 2.4, 2.3, 1.5, and 1.9 for Southeast in this recent election that would happen. That is for voter registration. Happily, in this voter registration that happened, youths had this number, 8,784,674 number. While middle-aged people had this number. So, which means we have more number of youths that registered for voter registration this year than in previous years. So which means that the youth are politically awakened. They are now participating, which means that those that we are using them as instruments for electoral violence might not see them again, because now they have been awakened. They are now conscious of their civic duty. In conclusion, the political awakening of Nigerian youth towards the formation of a nation, by nation, I mean a collection of people who have a determined goal that is not divided along ethno-religious lines, is the dawn of a healthy democracy. But this collective awakening spirit can make or mar the state. It will lead to the promotion of peace if the state and her functionaries become subservient and hence return the power of sovereignty to the people. But if the state and her functionaries continue to tread on a monstrous misconception of the state, as they arrogantly allocate ubiquity, omnipotence, and omniscience to themselves, they should learn from the fate of past tyrannical systems, which in their greediness to immortalize themselves and for absolute control would often inject into themselves a virus of self-destruction, eventually becoming the captive of the horde they created for their own preservation. So if the Nigerian state does not fall in line or fall into shape with this political awakening of the youth and them hand over power once again to the people, they will become a captive of the horde they have created. Thank you very much. That's the end of it.
So much. Thank you so much, Fred. And for this wonderful presentation, I know there is also a moderator. You could also, of course, proceed. And I can see that there is a question from Hafiz. Sufiano, please, you are welcome. And yeah, so please go ahead.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
I must commend the effort of Fred in making this thorough research and analysis of what is on ground concerning election in Nigeria. And in the analysis, you pinpointed 3 things that is affecting the voters' turnout on the election day, which you said the power of incumbency and the INEC, and as well the participation of the party on awareness or not creating enough awareness. So the issue of INEC, let me say negligence, I think that one has been solved from your presentation, because you said the electoral machine that they introduced has improved the electoral in Nigeria. Hello, can you hear me? Are you with me?
Yes. Yes.
So
go on.
In the aspect of the power of the incumbency, what can we do so that the incumbent governor or government will not have any influence or effect on the electoral, on the voters' turnout? Then the awareness that we talk about concerning the party creating awareness, I need to be clarified in that aspect. What do you mean by the party is not creating more awareness enough? Then if we have free and fair election, would that be that those people appointed will abstain from being corrupt officer in the office elected for? That's number 1 question. Then number 2 is that what is the major problem of Nigeria? Is it the electionary loopholes or the problem of the leadership coincide with the followership problem? Thank God that we have mentioned that the youth are awakened. How actually the youth are preparing to participate in the coming election? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hafiz. I want to make 1 point clear. The issue with elections in Nigeria is a very deep issue. First, the process of recruitment of leaders has an issue at its foundation. And we have to trace this problem down to the party level. The way that those that come out, that run for elections, are being voted or are being elected at the party primaries, there's an issue at that level. So even at the party level, there are some people in the party that feel that it is their work to bring out those that should represent or be flag bearers of the party. Those that present themselves as godfathers. So the first thing that should be done is that this problem should be solved at the party level. If you had followed the primaries of the PDP, you will notice that before the election, that Peter Obi pulled out from People's Democratic Party, and he gave his reason for doing that. And primarily, what he was pointing at was that they did not give an equal playing ground for members to participate at the primaries. And he pointed out the whole issue of monetizing votes, the monetization of votes at the party level. And if they do not come out with people that are competent at that party level, we eventually have a collection of incompetent people to choose from. And that will finally end us in the trouble where we are today. I want to say also that President Goodluck Jonathan showed us how an incumbent power should handle elections. First, remember that INEC is an independent body. And if INEC is an independent body, it should act as such. So those that are being elected or those that are being appointed to handle that office should act independently of the government in power and know that they are serving Nigerians and not the government in power. Then the government in power should desist from using its power of incumbency to affect election. You know, all these things are not something that they will just do, but people should allow their consciences to govern them. If we truly believe in Nigeria and we want it to work, we should work with the principle of truthfulness. And without this principle of truthfulness, there is nothing that is going to work. It will make the labors of our founding fathers to be in vain. So both the government in power and INEC should be independent in their service for and to Nigerians. So that is my answer to the question. I hope I answered your question, Hafiz.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Okay.
Can we go to Nova 9, please? You have a question or comment?
Okay, thank you, Fred. I really enjoyed your presentation. My name is Christopher Moise. So you were right to talk about an awakening of the youth, which I myself experienced greatly in Benin City, Edo State, the south side of Nigeria, on October 1st, which was supposed to be a day to celebrate the independence of Nigeria, but it turned out to be a day of campaign for Labour Party, the person of Peter Obi. And when you go around, many places in Benin were blocked. And when you go around, you find out that it was the youths. The youths were the ones championing this campaign. So it showed me how much progress we can make when we come together as young people. However, I have been reflecting on this particular situation of Nigeria and the idea of renewal or revolution that could bring about our growth in this political sphere. And I have come to realize that there are two possible means. One is constructive, one is destructive. And my question will be on that destructive aspect. But because I've discovered that even the destructive aspect could also lead to a constructive growth for us. The first constructive aspect of renewal would be what is going on right now, that the youths are using various means to enlighten people about Peter Obi, about the Labour Party, social media and all that, political rallies moving around as a constructive means. But what happens if after everything, after making so many persons get their PVCs and many youths are eventually able to cast their votes, what happens when, for whatever reason, due to corruption, the election still fails, in the sense that a candidate which we all know should not win still wins the election? What happens? Now that brings me to the aspect of the destructive. If we look at the case of Ghana, for example, J.J. Rawlings, you may say his actions were a little bit rash, but we are told that J.J. Rawlings received a list of certain corrupt officials, and all of them, he got them one after the other. And Ghana today is more or less like a disciplined nation because of J.J. Rawlings, what he did. So I think that it may be destructive, but if it fails, that after this constructive method, the youths may have to go a little bit violent to get some of these guys out of the office. Some of these guys who are not ready to go away, even when they see that everyone does not want them, we may have to use some violent means, some pressure. It may be destructive, but it could yield good results. I don't know what to think about that. That's why I would love you to say something. If after everything it fails, casting votes and everything fails, what do we do? Is this destructive aspect also a possibility? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chris, for that presentation. I wrote an article that I titled Protest, the art of protest or the service of protest, protest as loyalty to the state. And in that article, I argued that protest, which is to stand for something, helps government to keep in line or to still continue fulfilling its primary obligation to the people. I argue that the protest helps government in fulfilling its obligations, because protest is a challenge of government's action, which can say that what you're doing now, that even though it was working in the past, but now it is no longer working, that it should be looked into. I was saying in that article that the government should listen to the cries of the people and make use of those moments to enter into a purposive dialogue with the people, that the protest can lead to a progressive, cumulative actualization of the obligation of government if they use it well. And that was why I ended this work by saying that the Nigerian government should listen to the cries of the people. But if they fail to listen to this collective self-awakening of the Nigerian youth and submit power back to the people, that they will become a captive of the horde that they have created. Let me tell you something. You know, some people or reports had it that the NSAS protest was infiltrated, that thugs were sent to disrupt the whole system because the Nigerian government supposedly could not imagine how peaceful the protest was. And in one of my articles, when I compared it with the Nigerian Biafran War, I said that if they continue using a suppressive method to fight such things, that it will have a ripple effect on the people. And then sometimes that their suppressive method, they use it by founding a counter reaction, by using a counter reaction to destroy the revolution that is going on. So they can import a counter group to disrupt the whole system. But I concluded by saying that they may think that they have succeeded because it will go into an institute state, but they will eventually become a captive of the horde or the mob that they have created for their own sustenance. So, which means in a very clear term, nobody can stop something that its time has come. And as I'm talking to you now, the Nigerian youth have been politically awakened, and there is no going back. So, and that was why I said that the government should tap into this. If not, it will lead to problem. If it is not well managed, it will escalate into problem. Thank you. Chris, did I answer your question?
Thank you so much, Fred.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Great.
Yes. Somebody wrote something here. Okay, we was talking about okay, that the main issue is the issue of problem of party politics, that there is a huge problem from the early stage of the primaries at party level. I have witnessed that recently in our country, Tanzania, as we had them just now. You know, and that is why we have to encourage more people to join parties, because we cannot effect this change from outside. We have to effect this change from inside. It's only when we enter into the system that we will be able to sanitize it. But if we remain outside, this corruption will keep rotating among these very few that are holding us captive. But we need to set ourselves free.
Thank you. Some more questions, please. We still have 30 minutes, or comments. Probably what Fred is sharing also resonates with what is happening in our own countries. So Tanzania was mentioned, and probably in Ghana, India, you know, there might be some similar.
Somebody is raising up his empire.
Yes, please. Please go ahead. I don't see the hand myself.
Yes, I had raised it physically.
Yeah, please, Eliseo, welcome.
Thank you very much, Dr.
From Mozambique.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I would like first to very well enlightening presentation and very good study, which is almost giving a picture of most of our country's problem too. And also,
so, excuse me, can you speak up a bit louder, please?
Yes. Hello, can you hear me?
Thank you. Yes, please.
All right. Thank you very much. I was thanking Dr. Fred for the wonderful presentation and the wonderful study done about Nigerian electoral processes. And what he presented, it's a kind also of a picture from our countries. Most of the problems that he has enlightened, they are similar to our countries. But I have a lesson from what Dr. Obananya has just presented. It seems the Nigerian system is more mature than most of our countries, because I saw the processes of overcoming the problems. It seems they are not those which involve much of blood. They can just do some kind of a training and some kind of civic engagement, and they overcome bigger problems, which in our countries, those will lead to bloodshedding. But I have a question or two, which I would like to know from Dr. Fred. The first is on democracy. It seems this election system, it is all of it a copy from the Western style of democracy, which we are seeing in Africa. It seems not to work properly, because as you were just presenting, you talked of it being like unfair game. We have Electoral Commission not doing their jobs well, and in some of our countries we have the players being part of the game players or being among the game players, and like also having referees who are coming from the same people, the same government, the same parties. So that definitely will lead to some kind of unfairness of the elections. So I would like to hear from you if you have also in Nigeria a kind of problem of government people being the same in the political parties and themselves being among the game players and the referees at the same time. That is question one. Question two, it is on the kind of democracy we have, which takes the kind of elections which in Western countries, they go on well, seemingly, they go on well, but in Africa, they don't. So my question is, would you suggest some other type of government style or other type of democracy? Would you think that maybe, would there be an African arranging the processes so that we don't have much problems that like the ones we have in democratic Western style elections? And the last question is, you may think is needed for Africa in order to have free and thank you very much for the opportunity.
Okay. Yeah. Eliseo, thank you so much for the question. You know, I want to begin by saying that human beings in a way are the same everywhere. So you always find some selfish individuals. You know, you will always find some selfish individuals. And they are everywhere. It must not necessarily be in Africa. Even in the Western world, you also find selfish individuals. So you always have those that will come into office,
Yes.
and nepotism, corruption, and bribery will be so high. So it is not something that is only common within Blacks or Africans. It cuts across. It depends on the principle upon which one operates and how one has formed himself over time. So what we are asking for is that Africans should have the interest of the common good at heart. When they are assigned offices, that they should serve the people and not use those offices as an avenue to fill their pockets. That leadership should be more of service than acquiring wealth. And it is this misconception of politics or leadership in Africa that has made it that people do everything possible to gain that seat. So that is the very first thing that should be made, a change of mentality. Then you are asking whether there is a style of democracy that can be said to be African or that would favor Africans. I would say that Africa, or rather Africans, have not given democracy a chance. Africans have not actually tried democracy. Because in one way or the other, we are still being colonized by some other countries. So Africa is not yet entirely free. Apart from that, the Africans have not liberated themselves mentally. So it is when these things, it is when Africa and Africans liberate themselves, both mentally and physically, that they will be able to now sit down and govern themselves. Let me make this thing clearer. When those that colonized Nigeria left, the quarters that they were occupying were occupied by Africans. And when they occupied those quarters, they started parading themselves and looking down on their fellow Africans, just as the colonialists were looking down on Africans. Instead of seeing that position as a position of service, they saw it as a position to fill their pockets, just as how the colonialists were siphoning our resources and our funds and our raw materials and sending them down to their country. So the Africans that occupy their quarters and their positions continue the same thing that the colonialists were doing. And that is the problem that we are having. So Africa and Africans have not given democracy a chance. So until we give democracy a chance, then we will now come to the conclusion to now ascertain whether or not democracy has failed or not. However, I want to also add that I believe in adoption and in adaptation. So we should adopt the system and adapt it to suit us. So when we look at the various ways that Africans were governing themselves prior to the coming of the colonialists, we can pick one or two things that could help us and add it to the system. But first of all, let us give democracy a chance. So for me, democracy has not really been given a chance in Africa. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Fred. There is a question in chat. Somebody is saying,
Okay.
Dr. Fred Obananya, thank you for your excellent presentation. How can the increased political participation among the youth in Nigeria be harnessed to deal with terrorism in the country? Who should lead such a charge? The government, civil society organizations, or youth? Do you see the question in chat?
Okay. Yes, I do. Yes.
Great.
You know, when you look at the issue of terrorism, you know, terrorism is an act in which the perpetrator wants to instill fear in the watching audience. So their whole aim is to create fear in the audience that is watching. So most times they push the government, and many a time the government respond by going into harsh decisions, which sometimes we make some other members of the terrorist organizations in other places to have sympathy and join in the group. So the terrorism that we have in Nigeria is not just a simple one, because the issue we're having is coalition of terrorism, of terrorist organizations. So it is not just an issue that is, that a particular country can solve, but it should come together as a group. However, when the issue of economy is addressed, people will pull out from involving themselves in such heinous crimes, because sometimes people do them as a reaction or as an avenue to gain resources for self-sustenance. Remember that sometimes the act of terrorism goes with kidnapping or siphoning of funds. So if we deal with the issue of the economy, if government deals, decisively and works on the economy of the country, it will reduce to an extent. If the youths are employed, it will reduce to an extent. If the civil societies begin to conscientize people, if families join in the campaign, because people know those that are involved in these acts, the societies or the communities where they are, the villagers, they know them. So, they are children of some people, they are children of the society. So if civil society and families and communities join in the campaign for a better country, for a better nation, things will become better. Remember that many a time when people join in such, it is often done in reaction to something. Either they feel that they are being suppressed, or they are being maltreated in one form or another. So we have to look at the primary cause or the root issue of those matters and solve them. But at the forefront of those matters is the issue of economy. Because remember that many families in Africa, according to research, live on $1, on $1 per day. And that is so poor. So how do you, expect somebody that lives on them less than $1 a day not to involve himself or herself in crimes so as to find means of sustenance? So the issue of economy should be addressed. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Fred. Afiz, please, you have a question or comment?
Thank you, sir. In response to the question of Eliseo, I just want to add more contribution to it. There is a democratic parties in Africa. Let's say, for instance, in Yoruba community, we are practicing democratic system of government in appointing anybody to a particular position, and there is a gender balance.
Does Uncle Francis repair this?
So if you look at, let me take an instance, in appointing the kingship, it is not everybody that is eligible to be the king, but a particular family must be the king, just as a particular family must fill some 1 or 2 positions in the community, which belongs to their house. let me just put it like that, to their family lineage. By choosing, there may be a number of people that will be outlined that is eligible for the position, knowing fully well that it is one person that can occupy the position. So they will now go on what we call IFA consultation. The oracle consultation, which is the same thing as IFA, will be the one to appoint the most eligible, the most qualified one person, which other people we accept. Because if you are to define what is democracy, it is said that it is government by the people and for the people. It's because general people believe in oracle, that's why they go on oracle consultation. Because in Africa, we believe there are some spiritual power which have more, let me say, epistemic knowledge to look beyond what we are seeing now, that will look the kind of person that will actually bring growth and progress and development into the community, to be appointed as the leader. That's on that. Then secondly, Fred, please, I want you to look into the art of corruption of our leaders. The art of corruption I say I want you to look into is that what baffles me enough is that why do we need government if there is more privatization than public owns country organizations or complaints by the government? Because what is actually trending now in Nigeria is individualization of complaints and organizations. Can we survive in the light of privatization and individualization of Commonwealth? What I mean by individualization of Commonwealth is that most of the politicians occupying a post, they are actually taking the common or the national wealth into their pockets. What can we do to abolish such things in terms of individualization of common wealth? Then what can we do to stop the privatization of government-owned companies and organizations? Then in response to the question concerning discussion and constructive and disruptive action of the youth, if you look at the history of Nigeria, there is no any revolutions, I said, that succeed in Nigeria. The only thing we have is the nationalists. Look at the 1996 coup. It nearly succeeded, but it wasn't. Look at the Biafra. It's not succeed as well. What I actually trying to drive home is that even our independence, in most African countries, it was blood shed before they have their own independence. But Nigerian independence does not come through bloodshedding, but peaceful negotiation. But then, what kind of system of government are we using? And now, what kind of system of government are we practicing? Because then it was a regional practicing system. Now we have presidential, regional practicing system. Now we have presidential system of government. And in one way or the other, Peter Obi, I'm not too conversant about, I'm not too certain or sure about his being appointed as the president of Nigeria or elected as the president of Nigeria due to circumstances on the ground, which I think you know more better. Based on the incumbency that we have talked about, based on the ethnicity or the zoning of the presidency to different zones, and the tribalistic something barriers is also there, which we need to look into. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Afiz. And Fred, would you like to comment on that?
Okay. First and foremost, I'm not an expert on economy, but what I want to add to the issue of privatization is that the decisions of the government should be such that it should create platforms upon which individuals, that is the citizens, should flourish. So the primary obligation of government is not just to create peace and protect property, but it should be able to create systems and avenues that will allow or help her citizens to flourish. So I don't really want to delve into the whole idea of privatization. That's why I say that I am not an expert in economy, but let this principle guide her decisions, that those that are experts in that area should advise her adequately on what to do. But it should not be one that is born out of selfishness. It should not be one that is born out of the whole move to collect money from the universal purse and pocket it in one's bank. But it should be one that is geared towards the promotion of the common good. So,
thank you so much, Fred. Actually, talking about politics in Africa, it reminds me of the discussion that will take place actually on the 12th of this month at George Mason University, Washington, D.C., where there will be, an analysis of the book and actually the life of Walter Rodney, who wrote the book, How Europe Underdeveloped Africa. And I think many people know this book. So there'll be a presentation actually, and will be led by Professor Matt Meyer, the one that we know very well in global peace. So that will be actually an opportunity also to see what has happened actually since that book was launched in 1972. Now, talking about the dawn of political participation, somebody wrote in chat here that we are still blaming colonialism, 50 years, 60 years after independence. Is that justifiable? So should we continue complaining and blaming history? That's the question in chat from Bite Sam. Would you like to respond to that, Fred?
Okay. Oftentimes societies don't grow, unless they look back to know what was actual or how the whole problem started. So when they identify the problem, they should find a solution that is to be forward-looking to, so that generations to come will not continue looking back. So the thing is that often people just complain about what was done to Africans, and they do not try to find a solution or to say, how do we move from here? So the issue is not about looking back, but the issue is not looking forward, not creating a solution to the system that is already bad. So if somebody is looking backwards in order to find a solution towards forward looking, then it's a nice move. But if the person is just looking backwards to complain and make noise without trying to find a solution, then it's a fruitless endeavor.
Thank you so much, Fred, and thank you for this wonderful presentation. Actually, today I was really inspired by the dawn of political participation. And I don't know whether there is also some similarity with the Arab Spring, you know, that brought about a lot of change in West Africa. But maybe that should be a discussion for another time.
Altogether.
Yes, and today, in a special way, I'm visiting Montessori Maria Primary School here in Mwanza with students who are interested, of course, in the political issues, because they're studying civics, they are in Form 4. So this is the end of all levels. There are some students here and they would like to simply say hello with their teachers around here. So if you please say hello to hello.
Oh, hello, yeah, good. Nice to see you.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
That's good. Yeah. Thank you so much for coming around.
Yeah, thank you. We are trying to make sure that also, you know, we have peace studies, not only at universities, you know, the higher level, but also in primary school and secondary schools, actually even kindergarten or nursery schools, of course, in families. And so on that note, I would like to thank everybody, and we are sorry that we didn't them at the beginning. And yes, please, Fred, complete your thought.
Sir, before you close, I think Fred has something to say. Go ahead,
okay,
Fred.
There are some professional bodies. Yes, there are some professional bodies that have came to join us. Like the other priest that I was introducing you to, Father Anyedi Okure. He is the permanent delegate of the Dominicans from Justice and Peace to the United Nations. And he was here with us, you know, so I think it will be good that we recognize him and some other persons like Mrs. Dr. Obe Akelo. She's a lecturer at Dominican University, Ibadan, the HOD of philosophy department, and she measures she is interested in a social political philosophy. I also welcome Sister Dr. Benedict Okure. She is the Nigerian National Coordinator for African Faith Justice Network, Nigeria, and Sister Eukaria Madreke, African Faith Justice Network, Washington, D.C.
Wow.
And Mr. Piniel Momo from Dominican University, Ibadan, and Dr. Kelvin Akoje. He is an SDG expert and a radio presenter here in Nigeria. And Sir Dr. Sam, who was the senior special assistant to the Enugu State governor, you know, and many others, you know, who I might not be able to mention at this moment. And even Dr. Philip Olayoko, the director of West African Transitional Justice Center. There are so many others, but I can't mention all their names. And the Dominican sisters that I work with at Dominican for Justice and Peace. I thank you all for gracing this presentation and being present at this event. Thank you so much.
So with that, I will have asked you the present religion intervention in Nigeria politics, but no problem. That will be discussion for another day.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you so much, Afiz. Thank you very much, Fred, and all the guests and the visitors, participants. Thank you for joining Global Peace Studies for Sustainable Development in Africa. And welcome again next week, the same time, always on Wednesdays. And we use the same link, by the way. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Yeah, thank you. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Thank you, George.
Thank
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Yeah.